In It Together SC and the Diabetes Action Council of South Carolina present Wellness Wednesday every Wednesday on Coping with Tre Tailor. Coping. Hey there. Thank you so much for joining us on Coping. I'm Tre Tailor. It's Wellness Wednesday, and today we're coping with the pollen, that yellow haze that's all over your car and everywhere. Need I say more? Well, Dr. Jennifer Rice, nurse practitioner, will join us to help us breathe again, breathe again. The best things to do and what to use to help us get through the most sneezingest time of the year. That's coming up next on Coping. I'm Tre Tailor, but first, check the scroll at the bottom of the screen for resources concerning COVID, vaccines, and testing. Also, financial resources, jobs, housing, and help with your bills, and information on scholarships and several community events. All of that and so much more will be scrolling at the bottom of the screen throughout the show. Also, we are streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So please like, share, and follow us so we can get the message to the masses. Well, this is the season to be sneezing, the headaches, the sinus pressure, the coughing, the drainage. Man, oh man, the pollen is popping. And Dr. Jennifer Rice joins us to help us survive. Thank you, beautiful, so much. We appreciate it.
Hello.
Listen, so let me ask you first, this is kind of early for pollen season, isn't it?
It's very early. We were seeing pollen in February. I can't recall ever seeing it, quite this early. So people have been a little caught off guard.
Yeah.
When they're coming in and I'm like, nah, this is your allergies that are already acting up.
Is it because it got warmer?
It's the weather, the fact that we had such a mild winter. So things didn't really die. And then of course you have these 80-degree temperatures. I mean, and you're already seeing it before daylight savings time. The birds are out earlier and all these bees. And so, the bees are feeding right now. So yes, all this pollen, the cars are covered. And then we had the storm last weekend and all the wind was blowing. It's been a perfect little storm.
We mentioned cars. I'm going to get to that a little bit later. But how do we, first of all, because we're living in the world with pollen, is there the best way to avoid it other than staying in your house or deal with it?
So, I'm one of these that loves to ride with my windows down in the car. I can't do that now, because of the pollen, and you have it on the car. So even if you're going fast, it's still on your car. So you're still getting that pollen into your eyes. And, people will come in and say, well, I'm not allergic to pollen. Pretty much everyone has a sensitivity to pollen for the most part. Now, some folks, just think with allergies that you just have to sneeze. No, that's not necessarily with, the only thing with allergies. A lot of folks have postnasal drip, so they don't even realize that the drainage is going down the back of their throat. I usually ask my patients, have you been clearing your throat lately? And oh yeah. Okay. That's postnasal drip. So it's going down the back of your throat. So you might not sneeze, but you could have a little nasal congestion, some sinus pressure, itchy, watery eyes, scratchy throat. Some folks will get the headaches, low grade fever, and think that they have a sinus infection, but don't forget that there's still COVID out there. So there's no, exact way.
You may not know what you got out here.
Correct. Right. Not seeing a lot of flu now because we did have a late flu season, but definitely, still COVID.
Yeah. So sinus pressure, sneezing, runny nose. You mentioned postnasal drip. That's interesting. What are some of the best things to use to combat these symptoms? And do we have to do it until pollen season is over?
For the most part, a lot of folks that may not have had allergies as kids, you'll start to see it in adulthood. That's just the body's, way of adjusting. Avoidance, ways to avoid it. Take your shoes off when you come into the home. Do not wear your shoes into the home because the pollen is covered everywhere. So you want to make sure that you take off your shoes in the home. If you have pets, you'll need to wipe their paws down, when they come from outside because they're bringing that pollen inside. It was so nice. I had to turn on my air conditioning. I love having the windows open, but I could not have the windows open because I knew the pollen would come in. So you'll have to keep your windows closed and either have the house hot or go ahead and, turn on the AC, which I did
Yeah,
not want to have to do, but
I didn't either.
have the windows open. When you're outside, like this weekend, I was cutting grass, I had on a mask, and not just the surgical mask, but like the N95, because
Right.
otherwise there's no way I would have been able to make it. So wearing a mask as well. And you don't have to necessarily take medication. It's, really a personal preference as far as the symptoms. Some folks don't like to take pills. But like nasal saline spray is wonderful because if you think about it, you're inhaling that pollen. Most folks do have that nasal congestion. The nasal saline spray will help to coat the nasal passages and help with some of that congestion.
But the saline spray, you
Saline
think
spray.
is better than, the stuff with a whole bunch of other stuff in it.
Well, it depends. The saline spray is good for preventative. So that's to be used before you even notice the
Oh, I
congestion.
see.
So
Okay.
if you notice that you tend to have more severe allergies this time of year, doing that nasal saline spray will kind of help to start flushing the things out before you have that congestion. And it's good to use in between. I am a big believer in the nasal steroid sprays because they do work well. Part of the allergic response is the swelling of the nasal passages. So that inhaled steroid, like the generic for Flonase or
Right.
Nasoport, one of those will help to reduce some of that swelling in there. Not Afrin. Afrin is not, it helps people to breathe, but Afrin, you should never use it for more than 3 days because it works really well. You can breathe well, but your nose can actually become accustomed to it, and it's actually
Wow.
addictive. So that's
Oh,
why they say on
wow.
the bottle, don't use it. So you bound. So I mean,
Oh,
so
wow.
the folks
Wow.
that keep the Afrin in their pocket, they're addicted. So
Oh my goodness. Wow.
yes,
Wow.
but yes.
How do you feel about a neti pot? And I'm familiar with a neti pot. So first, tell everybody what a neti pot is, and if you recommend it.
So, and when I tell patients about a neti pot, it's considered old school. So it like
Yeah.
legit looks like a little teapot. And basically what you're doing is you're flushing water through your nasal passages, but it is wonderful to help prevent sinus infections because a lot of times that mucus, that swelling, that inflammation, so that inflammation causes that mucus just to kind of sit.
Hmm.
And that's what causes the pressure behind the eyes, the nasal congestion, and people having all that fullness and the pressure. Well, if you use the neti pot, it helps to flush those things out before it sits and becomes infected. And that's the main thing is most of the time people don't need an antibiotic. A lot of times, and it's hard to convince people that they don't need an antibiotic because they feel so bad in the first 2 to 3 days of it. You are going to feel terrible.
Mm.
An antibiotic is not going to fix the nasal congestion. Doing the neti pot, drinking warm liquids, you have to stay hydrated
Yeah.
because if the mucus will stay thick, you can thin that mucus naturally by hydrating well. And I'm not talking about coffee or soda because that doesn't hydrate the body. Water
Water.
works really well. And that helps to thin the mucus. Then you can get that mucus out. But if the mucus stays, that's how it can lead to an infection.
So you say water. What about tea? Like hot tea?
Hot tea is wonderful, but anything with caffeine actually can dehydrate you. So you have to
Mm.
be careful. So one hot tea in the morning or a cup of coffee is okay, but you can't use that continuously throughout the day because you're not truly hydrating yourself.
Right. Dr. Jennifer Rice has practiced for over 22 years and joins us today to talk about pollen. We are smack dab in the middle of pollen season, early, albeit, but still we're dealing with it. If you just joined us, please hit the rewind button because she has already shared some great information on how you can get through the season. I told you when we were off the air, I've got a 7-year-old downstairs. I hear him screaming right now.
Oh,
Supposed to be watching chipmunks or something, but because he's been hit with the pollen. Is there something different we should use or do for our kids? Our
So
little
for
one?
kids and parents, often are frustrated because, you feel so helpless
Yeah.
seeing your child suffer, but there's just no magic cure for it. It's just time. So for kids, they can't quite have some of the decongestants that adults can have because it can be harmful for children. And they actually don't recommend any actual cough and cold medications for children under the age of 6 years old.
Mm-hmm.
But Benadryl is the generic for Benadryl is safe. For some children, it does hype them up though. So it depends. I usually recommend a dye free because all of the dyes have things that can, hype children up. But
Right.
the antihistamine helps to dry that up. Kids aren't great with blowing their noses like adults are. So
Right.
that's how a lot
Right.
of their mucus stays because they don't blow very well. So that's where the nasal saline really comes into play for
Mm-hmm.
them. They don't like it, but we don't like working, but we have to do it.
You do what you got to do. Oh,
Good.
you're right. I just had a battle with that saline spray. I mean, it's funny because last night he was fine with taking it. Just this morning, just a few moments ago, it just went in, and I don't know. He just it's because I kids went in and out his
Yes.
mouth, and
Right. Yeah.
it's like it's
It's
for
yeah.
your good. Sit
Yes.
down, lay on your back, just let
Yeah.
it go on down.
So one good thing to trick the kids is to have them take a shower,
Hmm.
stand in the shower, get the water as hot as it possibly can. That steam helps to naturally release things, and ask them to blow their nose in the shower. The tub doesn't give the same, effect, but just, get that water nice and hot, stand in that bathroom, that steam, they tend to feel much better, once they do that.
Right, right, right. What about clothing? You mentioned when we come in the house, we should take off our shoes. Should we strip down with our clothes too? And what about our hair?
More than likely, you will have gotten some pollen on you. All you have to do is accidentally brush up next to the car. So
Yes.
you'll be able to see that. So if you're outdoors a lot, yes. If I'm working outdoors, as soon as I come inside, I don't like to bring the clothing inside because I have all that, dirt and pollen and everything on you. So unless you got something where you can blow everything off, I mean,
Yeah.
take a blower if you want. But in hair, when you're working outside, try and keep your hair tied up.
Okay.
I wear a hat to try and keep, all that debris from you. But
So just not regular in and out, in and out. You don't have to. If you're like, for instance, the kids, they're outside playing, so
yes,
they need their hair washed. But if I'm just in and out of the car on a regular day, I don't necessarily need to wash my hair.
no.
Right.
And washing your hair, because I grew up, hearing that's how you get sick is wash
Right.
your hair and go out in the cold. No, that's not going to make the allergies worse.
Right. Right.
Um, so that's okay. So you're fine to wash your hair and go out. If your pores are open, that doesn't cause sickness.
And what about your car? I mean, I know, does it help to rinse off your car several times a week?
Yes, you'll have to rinse off, but don't forget the inside because the
Inside.
pollen is on the inside as well. So don't forget to cover the dash, pretty much everything within the car. But wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands all the time, because right now everything is covered with pollen. A lot of times people will have the tendency, even opening up the car door, and then you get in the car and you rub your nose. Guess
Yeah.
what? You've just been, more exposed to pollen. Try
Yeah.
not to rub your eyes because you can, get the pollen there. So it's about the barrier protection. So keeping the windows up or down, depending on where you are, trying not to have things that are, completely exposed if you're out for a long period of time. And then taking off the clothing, definitely the shoes, because then you're just tracking pollen all throughout the house. Vacuum, sweep, do all those things because it builds up. And change your air filters. A lot of people don't think about that. This is a good time of year to change those air filters, because especially if you are using your air conditioning, because and get the filters that will help with some of those allergens, because then it's just floating through the air in your home.
Yeah. We're talking to Dr. Jennifer Rice. She is a board certified nurse practitioner. She practices in Lexington, South Carolina, and we are coping with pollen. Before you go, I want to ask you about medicines for folks with high blood pressure or diabetes. Should they treat their pollen symptoms different?
So I always tell people, make sure you reach out to your healthcare provider to make sure, because yes, a lot of the decongestants, especially, will interfere with the blood pressure, and so it can raise the blood pressure. You also have to be careful with folks, that are diabetic or that do have kidney issues, because there are certain medications that just aren't best for them.
Mm-hmm.
The safest thing that doesn't, tend to interact with medications is, like you mentioned, the nasal saline spray, doing the warm steamy showers. You can even do like Vicks rub, like to the chest.
Love that.
Having the natural stuff. So we run a diffuser in the house. Eucalyptus is a great one. Like peppermint, that helps,
Yeah,
with,
yeah.
with the air.
Yeah,
So
I'm running some lemongrass right
yes,
now.
yes. And then, yeah, just making sure that the medication that you take won't interfere with your other ones. But just contact your primary care office. They'll, recommend, their regular stuff. I have a lot of folks that like to use Mucinex, which is good and typically doesn't interfere with things, but Mucinex doesn't help with that like postnasal drip. So you have to
Gotcha.
have an antihistamine to help with like the runny nose, the watery eyes, those types of things. And
So,
typically they're safe.
right. So you may need multiple things to tackle your multiple symptoms.
Correct. You got it.
Yeah.
You got it.
Now, you mentioned the warm weather in South Carolina has attributed a lot to it. Now we've got a little cold snap coming back. So will that mean the pollen will leave?
No.
No?
And
Oh,
at this
wow.
point,
It's here.
because of the mildness of the seasons, it's not getting cold enough for things to die. It'll slow it down. So don't let your guard down.
Yeah.
And especially when you're going outdoors, you might want to take a towel and wipe things down. But remember, all that dust is going to come up towards you. So just be careful when you are even just sitting outside.
Yeah.
Even if it's cool and you don't see it, that doesn't mean that
It's not
there'll
there.
be more. Right.
All right. Jennifer Rice is an adjunct professor at the School of Nursing at Clemson University and a board certified family nurse practitioner with over 22 years of experience. She practices in Lexington, South Carolina. Friend to the show and has joined us today as we are coping with pollen. Dr. Rice, thank you so much for joining us today and giving us this great information. This is stuff that will help us survive these next couple of months. And pollen season is until when? How long do we have to deal with it?
So typically we usually see like March to May.
Okay.
Things have changed so much with our climate. I honestly can't tell you and decide, because even when you get to the summer, some folks suffer from summer allergies. There tends to be, especially in this region, there's something that's always growing. So you have folks that have like the grass allergies to certain trees, so then you're sitting outside. So allergy season for some folks is year long.
Yeah. Wow. All right. We'll deal with it, girl. Dr.
Yes.
Jennifer Rice, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you helping us cope with the pollen.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So listen, if you have a story or initiative that could help someone cope, please email booking@copingwithtretatailor.com. If you've got a product or service that could help someone cope, please email copingwithtretatailor@gmail.com. We would love for you to be a proud sponsor, just like all of our sponsors, the Diabetes Action Council, also In It Together SC, Javis Financial Services, Palmetto Media Connections, the Fifth Circuit Solicitor's Office, Attorney Byron Gibson, Agape Counseling and Training Services, Black Pages Black Expo going on this weekend in Charleston, South Carolina, the Comet Bus System, and Computers Unique Dutch Square Mall. Coming up next, we've got your devotional on coping. I'm Tre Tailor.
Hello, I'm Carolyn Sawyer, an entrepreneur and caregiver. Part of taking care of your health is knowing if you're at risk of type 2 diabetes. Prediabetes is serious and puts you at risk for developing type 2 diabetes. Up to 90% of South Carolinians who have it don't know they have it. Visit inittogethersc.org. Take an online test to find out your risk and join a diabetes prevention program. This message brought to you by the Diabetes Action Council of SC.
I'm Tre Tailor, and we're always coping with something, but the good thing is God is always there. Today's devotion says, refuse to worry. In this world, there will always be something enticing you to worry. That is the nature of a fallen, fractured planet. Things are just not as they should be. So the temptation to be anxious is constantly with you. The best defense is continual communication with me. Season with thanksgiving. Communicate and thanking. Awareness of my presence fills your mind with light and peace, leaving no room for fear. This awareness lifts you up above your circumstances, enabling you to see problems from my perspective. Live close to me, Jesus says. Together, we can keep the wolves of worry at bay. That's your devotion today. It's from Jesus Calling. I'm Tre Tailor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Coping, find peace of mind to survive through whatever. Coping, learning the way that we thrive all together. Coping, finding out what's real. Coping, we can heal, we can heal, we can heal. Coping with stress, coping with strife, bringing hope for success, for improving our life. Coping beyond hoping to do more than survive. Ways to live a healthy life. Coping and promoting learning what you can do. 6 ways to a better you.